Okay, so let's talk about types of numbing and medicating. When we think about numbing and medicating, it's really common, especially culturally and the stigma that exists in our culture. It's really common to think about pills and drugs. And I want to expand that a little bit for you because when we look at numbing and medicating, number one, we want to make sure we're paying attention why we're numbing and medicating. And typically, for most people, there's some unresolved trauma or unresolved grief. Without the unresolved trauma or grief, I probably wouldn't need to numb or medicate. And when you think about numbing and medicating, sometimes it's harder to understand how, Amber, you mean to tell me that when I scroll on TikTok for 2 hours, that's similar to smoking a blunt? Well, yeah, because what a lot of people don't understand about addiction, what we at the Healing Collective call numbing and medicating, is it's an escape, it's an avoidance, it is an attempt to cope with something. And so often our culture focuses on whatever the addiction is, for example, alcohol. And our culture looks at alcohol as the problem. But regardless of what the number or medicator is, it's doing the same thing to our brain and our body. It's allowing me to separate. It's allowing me to dissociate and to numb out and to not feel. So, does it mean that me smoking cigarettes is just as bad as me using meth? No. Some have consequences, greater consequences that happen much sooner than others, like alcohol. Alcohol can be used for years before there are physical consequences for some people, and can be used for years before there are behavioral consequences for some people. But it's not about the alcohol. The alcohol is a tool used to not feel, to dissociate, to numb, to medicate. And so, absolutely, there are some that are more dangerous than others. And I, in my own judgment, consider codependency as one of the most dangerous. It's one of the hardest to treat. And when we think about codependency, that's a control addict, that's an addiction to a person, that's a people pleaser. All of those terms are synonymous. But when you think about numbing and medicating, a lot of people don't consider people pleasing as a number and a medicator. And it absolutely is, because it takes me out of my body. It lets me not feel what I need or what I'm deficit in. And it keeps me focused in an external locus of control, much like when I'm trying to find drugs and I'm figuring out where the next chase is going to be. It's an external locus of control. And I know that that's scary to hear, that they're really synonymous and it's not about the substance or the behavior, but it is about the brain and it's about the mentality. So when you think about types of numbers and medicators, it's really important to be able to consider all behaviors and substances as such. One that a lot of people don't consider oftentimes is exercise. And exercise absolutely is used as a coping strategy. But what I help people gauge and learn is if you were to put the behavior on a continuum, number one, it's not going to harm me and it's not going to harm anyone else. And number two, typically what happens is I do it in excess. So maybe I started out with exercise 3 to 4 times a week, and maybe now I do it every day. And maybe I only numbed with exercise every day for an hour, and now I go every day for 2 hours. When I do more, or when I cross this imaginary line and it becomes excessive, and really I'm the one that makes that judgment. I'm the one that really knows. Being able to look at food in the same way, work in the same way. What makes it dangerous and numbing and medicating is when I use it in excess, when I use it to escape. And so when you're thinking about numbers and medicators, please know that it really can be any behavior and any substance. And what our culture identifies as the problem is so much bigger than that. It's not just the person under the bridge with the brown paper bag. It's also the overfunctioner working in the corporate office 7 days a week, 80 hours a week. So I hope this topic was helpful, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about numbing and medicating in a couple more videos. But I wanted to give you some more awareness and some hopefully create some curiosity around what are my numbers and medicators.